Welcome to the Gary Null Show, a program designed to enhance mental, physical, and spiritual well-being through science and the wisdom of the ages. Let us take you on a journey of empowerment. Sit back, relax, and get ready to change your life for good.
Hi everyone, I'm Gary Null. Today we are concluding our special, in-depth original investigative report that we're broadcasting here on the Gary Null Show, The Drugging of Our Children. Right now there's an initiative underway to try to have every man, woman, and child in America tested to determine if they have the symptoms that would be masking mental illness. Well, when you find out that some of the questions they're asking, such as, do you ever have an off day? Do you ever feel frustrated by things you can't control? You sign that saying yes. Now you're in their grips. Now you're told clearly you have the proclivity for mental illness and you should be on drugs. Many people are opposing this. Well, let's see why. Let's complete our series, The Drugging of Our Children.
Eli Lilly and Company found out that their patients taking Prozac had a higher suicide attempt rate than the same patient, sometimes literally the very same patient, on a sugar pill. So what did they do with that data? They hid it.
The Eli Lilly Corporation, pharmaceutical company, for nearly 15 years covered up their own internal investigation that showed that anyone on Prozac is 12 times more likely to attempt suicide than those using other antidepressants, not 12 times more than the average population, 12 times more than those already on other antidepressants. This is a criminal act, and I want to know why these criminals are still walking the streets.
Now, it should be noted that Eli Lilly has stated that the drug was never intended for young children, but for those 18 and older. And 10 or not, ask how many parents have young children they're giving Prozac. Well, how did they get it? You cannot obtain it without a prescription.
The doctor told us that he thought the drug Prozac would help Jacob, that it's a common prescribed drug used in teenagers now, that he thought it would help him with his moods and just make him feel happier. So he was put on Prozac that afternoon, 10 milligrams. The morning of my son's death, we had talked that morning. He did not want to go to school that day. And he just said that he would go the next day. They were getting out for Christmas holidays. I left for work, and a few hours later I began to call home because with him being at home by himself, I was concerned. So I did not get an answer, and I continued to call for a couple of hours. Then I left, and it took me 30 minutes to get home, and I found my son hanging in our attic. My husband and I attended a FDA hearing in Washington about the side effects that can happen with these drugs, and unfortunately the first hearing there was 65 parents there. Their children had died while on antidepressants. Some of them were on the drug a matter of days before they committed suicide.
There is also evidence linking antidepressants and suicide in adults.
After being on Prozac for 21 days, my wife shot and killed both of these two boys right here. She turned the gun to herself and shot herself twice. Now she's in jail for murder.
Since I've been on Prozac, I've experienced the following adverse reactions. A drug-induced insanity that has caused several self-destructive outbursts. There was an extended period of anger, rage, and hostility, and it turned into terrible feelings that suicide was the only answer.
This is hard for me because I tried to commit suicide in front of my 5 children. I didn't know what I was doing. I don't remember exactly what happened. All I know is that my husband took the gun away from me and my children was looking from the other room. What would have happened if these children had seen their mother commit suicide?
My sister did commit suicide in front of Lindsay. Another woman spoke of hollow point bullets. That's what my sister used to do it.
The side effects of some of these drugs can be increased suicidal ideation. There's a recent black box warning by the government that giving these drugs to children and adolescents could increase suicidality. The facts are that's true. There was an increase in suicidal ideation in the studies that they did, which were questionnaire studies amongst the children. But it was not an increase in suicide. It was an increase in suicidal thoughts. The recommendation was that anybody being treated for this should be monitored closely. Well, I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, as a psychiatrist, I feel any patient I place on an antidepressant has to see me at least once a week until I feel the drug has been safely monitored and established, and I may even continue that long afterwards. I don't see any rationale for just prescribing the drug and telling somebody to come back in 3 months and let them know how it's working. That's poor medicine.
All I can say is these children are put on these drugs for reasons that are so unnecessary. These are psychotropic drugs that have deadly side effects to some children, especially children that do not need to be on them. If you're clinically depressed, these drugs can help your children. But if you're not depressed, these drugs can kill your children. And that is what has happened to so many of our children, is they were put on these drugs when they should have never been placed on them.
One cannot expect the pharmaceutical industry nor the medical industry to take responsibility for each and every child in this nation. The responsibility lies with each of us as parents to take control of our health back.
What you want to do is look for alternatives. There are other things you can be doing. You can check on their diet. You can check on sleep. Have them check for allergies. Go to your medical doctor and talk to them about other kinds of therapies that have not got to do with the actual medical route. It can be a natural kind of program.
We noticed that Corey's anxiety, now we know, it was only happening early in the morning. He'd get up in the morning and he'd be anxious about going to school, and he'd just fret about it, and he just said, I can't go to school. And then later on in the morning, he would tell his mom, hey Mom, take me to school, I feel better. And we feel now that it was his low blood sugar. He hadn't had anything to eat, and he's an eater.
Many children go to school, they don't have any food, they become hypoglycemic. Or they may put a Pop-Tart in the toaster and go to school, and the next thing you know, they're hyperglycemic, then hypoglycemic, and have behavior problems because of that.
So many families accept a prescription for their child before looking first at what is that child eating? What is the child being served in school or at a fast food restaurant or the junk food store on the way home? If you're not looking there, you're not looking at the source of the problem.
I think ADHD has a much clearer diagnostic criteria, other than diet, and certainly one would take a history about diet and food and what kids eat in terms of making a diagnosis. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence about that, and certainly it can't be discounted. But I'm not sure that's the cause of ADHD. I'm not saying that it doesn't cause other problems, and it may cause hyperactivity in some kids who are not ADHD.
I believe that a big part of his problem was anger and poor nutrition. And when I say poor nutrition, I don't mean that he had to eat crackers and water. I mean that it was all processed food. It's the way I was raised.
His friends were all have the driver's licenses. They were going down to the Texaco station, getting the big gulp or the candy bars, and I think that was more lunch than the school lunch was.
Do you see a difference in their behavior based on what they eat?
Absolutely, yes.
What's the difference?
I could line them up without looking in their lunchbox and tell you who has too much sugar in their lunchbox, who didn't eat breakfast. It's easy. It's easy.
We are a junk food nation. They bring the junk food in for the kids to eat. The PTO moms will go out and buy the junk food, buy the pizza, buy the McDonald's hamburgers, and bring them into the kitchens at school and sell them to the kids. That's school lunch.
They're drinking Coke, eating burgers, French fries, junk food. You have all that junk food.
Nothing healthy, no fresh fruit, nothing healthy.
And that definitely can affect a child's behavior.
I think there are two issues that are of particular concern to me. One is all of the junk that gets cooked into foods, colors, flavors, sugar, but then also the tremendous influx of cheese, dairy products, fatty foods. These things, the additives can affect children's attention and ability to concentrate. And the fatty foods can affect them hormonally so that they actually feel differently. They may have higher levels of hormones that can make them domineering and aggressive. It's a real serious problem.
There's so many different allergies that they're suffering from because of our diets.
We think a child is misbehaving or a little bit slow or a little antsy. We don't realize that it's something that child had for breakfast or for lunch that's influencing the way they feel and the way they behave.
No one other than Dr. Tracy has mentioned that nutrition is a big part of it.
Corey's MD that prescribed the drugs never mentioned. I mean, I think he's probably spent 10 minutes with Corey in his doctor's office, and no one, the psychologist, no one has mentioned the possibility of nutrition being the problem, or allergies or anything else.
I didn't know that a physical examination was required before being prescribed Prozac. I mean, I don't think any of the doctors who prescribed it to me asked for a physical examination.
Until I started doing my own research, nobody ever told me about the importance of diet. You know, you hear that, you think that, you know, oh, they're health nuts, you know, go eat a granola bar or something, but you don't understand the importance of what you put into your body until you see a young man like my son being poisoned. And that's what he is, he's poisoned.
They are not looking at kids today as the next generation that they really need to care for and nurture. They're looked at as potential markets.
Whatever doctor it is has people from these companies visiting them and, you know, giving them things to prescribe you their drug.
My son Sam is 4. We noticed that his activity level was very high, and I called our early childhood development program in our school system and had him screened for developmental disabilities. The first suggestion that they had for us was that they wanted to bring in their expert pediatrician on ADHD to evaluate Sam. And then they mentioned medication. And these 2 teachers didn't realize the fact that we had been through the nightmare that we had with our older son and medications, and we're insisting on behavioral modifications. And I don't see any need for Ritalin at this point or any kind of medication if he's handled properly in the classroom.
So now I'm free, I'm out of jail, but the problem remains I still have no idea where my son is.
I'm from Gary Null and Associates in New York City, and we're doing a story on Vincent Booth. And we wanted to see if we could interview someone.
No. So I don't know what condition he's in. I'm worried about it, and I hope that the next hearing I have with Judge Leonard Edwards will result in a visitation with my son and eventual reunification. Most Americans will ask, how can this happen in America? I don't believe that this could happen in America. Well, it is happening. If there's one thing I've learned about this whole nightmare, it's that I never imagined how powerful the government can be. I had a perfectly normal life. I was a notary public. I had a perfect driver's license record for 35 years, never got in trouble, never been in jail, and now I had everything taken from me, including my son. I have nothing.
You need to get off our property. I just want to speak to someone about Vincent Booth. You need to get off our property right now.
I'm like a pariah, according to the government.
In the town of Mattawa where I lived, they have banned me from it. I mean, I can't even be within 25 miles of the town. And I mean, it's going to be that way for at least 5 years.
I don't know what his future is going to be. I don't know whether he'll ever be weaned off of any of this medication. At one point, I caught him with aerosol cans. He was using them as inhalants. I don't know if he'll ever live by himself. I don't think he can. And I think that at this point, he's relying so much on medications that he doesn't think he can ever live without them.
Since I took the drugs, since I had the manic episode, I feel like that experience just kind of affected me in a way that still affects my everyday life in some way. I went through a point where it was really hard for me to even be on the subway. It's not like that anymore. I mean, I just kind of go through my everyday life, but there's something beneath the surface and something that's changed. Even if the physical effects of the drug are gone, there are just things that stay with you.
One thing we learned from this whole experience is that, we're a strong family. And that God blessed us. And blessed us with good friends and a good family. Because at Corey's sentencing, we had over 50 people from the community came to be with Corey, along with 15 of the staff members from the detention center, which had never been done before. And they all together, with their supervisors, wrote a letter to the prosecutor stating that they didn't think Corey should be in jail and he should be let out.
I mean, the real issue is that you trust doctors and you trust these people who are counseling you and, giving you things that are supposed to make you better. And, it's one thing for them not to make you better. It's another thing for them to give you one of the worst experiences you've ever had in your life.
But whose purpose does this serve?
I think a number of actors are seeing their purposes served. Parents who are overwhelmed with the demands of work, with making a living and making it in society, the way they've been taught that one is supposed to make it, they find something in there. Teachers find something in there because of they can manage their classes a little more easily when a third of the children are drugged. Pharmaceutical companies find it in their interest because their profits are soaring. Advertisers find it in their interest because they're advertising these drugs, and doctors are prescribing and so forth. So there's a search for power and control by a number of individuals.
We are increasing the diagnostic net of conditions that are neuropsychiatric, whether it's social anxiety. What does that mean? A person's shy? No, they have social anxiety. Shyness is not a disease. And if a person is not adversely affected by being shy, why are we calling this social anxiety that needs Paxil?
Stop the labeling. Stop the labeling and stop the drugging. And let's start talking about healthfulness. Let's start talking about how to live healthy, happy, prosperous lives. And that's far more therapeutic than putting drugs into kids and telling them they're disordered in some way.
I think the best hope is for parents to really take the ball and try to find the best help for their children and to work hard with their children. And again, it's not the case that parents are bad parents. If they have a child who has inattention, difficulty concentrating, difficulty focusing, and hyperactive behaviors, the major solution is finding a way to parent that child and find a parenting style that matches their child's personality.
I think parents care. They want the best for their children. It's just that we've become so short-sighted as to what's important that they don't even know what to care about exactly.
Depression in children is not a biological phenomena. Depression in children is a spiritual, psychological, and social issue. Kids get depressed for reasons, and whether or not the reasons are the parents or the teachers, because there can be other reasons why kids get depressed, including our society, including the culture they're in, their peer cultures. But whatever the reason kids get depressed, the solution is in the hands of adults to provide children hope, to empower children, to give children a sense that they can matter in their own world and in the larger world. There is no substitute for adults in the lives of children giving them hope. Hope does not lie in a pill.
My mom decided to take me off the drugs because I was, flipping out, I was twitching, going crazy.
I had taken him off all the drugs by December of 1999. The Paxil, he had come off in a month. After we removed Paxil in October of 1999, he hallucinated. He had told his teacher he heard a voice in his head telling him to do bad things. And one occasion, he was banging his head against the desk, and he was asked repeatedly by the teacher to stop, and he couldn't.
I started blacking out and dizzy, really, really dizzy, and going to sleep. I could not stay awake, headaches.
Discontinuation of the drugs can be a problem, especially drugs that have a relatively short half-life, means that they are quickly excreted and dissipated. If one is on a substantial dose of these drugs, there are side effects that can occur. Not side effects, what we call withdrawal effects. And these can be quite unpleasant, causing irritation, headache, syndrome that looks something like a flu-like illness, or maybe even stomach problems.
I found it interesting that once we decided, he needed to be weaned off the drugs, and I talked to Dr. Tracy, and I learned a lot about weaning the drugs and tapering off. I had to tell the MD how to do it and what prescriptions we needed.
When we decided to start taking me off of the medication, I thought it was a great thing. I felt really good about it. And as I was getting off, less and less of a dosage, I started feeling better and better.
Corey was on 300 milligrams. And so he lowered it to 225, and he was on that for a couple of weeks. And we slowly lowered him down from 225 to 150 and then 75. And we know that it was too fast, because when he got to 37.5 milligrams, he finally had a clear head, and he just said he's not taking them anymore, and he cold turkeyed off of Effexor. And within 2 days, he was just a ball of emotion. So we talked him back on the drugs, and he calmed down, and then we slowly brought him down from 375 to 25 milligrams to 20 milligrams. And then we had to go to a compounding pharmacy to bring him down, and we brought him down 5 milligrams at a time over about a month-and-a-half period. And he's been off the drugs since then.
All these drugs should not be discontinued precipitously, but again, if they are to be stopped, they should be stopped under the supervision of a physician and stopped on a slow basis. Drugs like Prozac can be stopped easily because it takes so long for them to be dissipated from the body, for the metabolites to be excreted, that there is no real withdrawal syndrome. But other drugs such as Paxil or Zoloft may have a relatively short life in the body, in which case discontinuation has to be closely monitored.
When I pulled my son, Michael, off all the drugs and stopped them, within 3 weeks he shot up in height, in weight. He looked healthier. At one point, the school teacher, feeling very sorry about the whole ordeal, came to our house with her sympathy, and she looked at him and she said, "Michael, you look wonderful." And to me, it was a different child. He looked healthy. He never looked healthy on the drugs. He looked gaunt. He looked wasted, like he was wasting away. He was always tired, didn't have an appetite. And now I had my little boy back again.
Everybody goes through, has emotional issues in life and goes through points when they're depressed, and it doesn't mean they have a disease. And I now know, or I've known that I don't have a disease and I don't have anything wrong with me, and I'm not doomed to be depressed forever.
Over the last 13 years, as I have worked with so many people on these medications and seen them as they have slowly withdrawn off of the meds and gotten their lives back together again, it's like watching someone being born, because they say over and over again, "I have my life back. I can do this, I can do that." It's so sad to see how many things you can no longer do when you take these medications, and yet when you wean them slowly off of the drugs, and then they begin to rebuild their body with the nutrients that they need and that the drugs have depleted from their systems, they become whole again. They can function again, and they're so grateful to just be normal.
Now that I'm off the drugs, I feel really great. I feel like I can, be my own myself, do things for myself, actually do things, I know what's going on now. I can take hold of my life and really get it going.